The team here just poring over their laptops on Charles Leclerc's. Well, it's the only Ferrari they're out to use Charles Leclerc's numbers on at the moment. They'll swap it around if Carlos Sainz. The team here just poring over their laptops. So they're just Charles Leclerc's. It's the only Ferrari they're out to use. And then, so let's work along a little bit further along the pit lane, because I do want to get down to Mercedes, because there was big work going on that car a few minutes ago. Just working forward through the Ferrari garage. We talked about the wheel guns yesterday. I'll come on this side of you. And this pit lane here at during the test. If you smash up your car during the test, you won't be allowed to use that. You're not allowed to have a spare car, basically. So now the work on the Mercedes is still ongoing, but it's coming to a conclusion. A little while ago, the hybrid system safety tank, the high voltage tank, was up behind the Mercedes, and everybody had cleared out of the garage. They were doing... So I wonder if there was a battery change or certainly a floor change on the car before George Russell was able to get back into the car, which he's now doing. That's a big job. Now, I don't think that's a bit of scheduled work for the Mercedes team, and so they are just having a look at the car, but it looks like it's all bolted back together, and they're certainly bolting George Russell in. I will address at this point a question that comes in all of the time on social media. People are constantly asking us, because it's something you see on every single car. I will address at this point. Bob can see it just above the 63 number on the front of the Mercedes. You see this rectangular section with a semicircle at the top of the planet sticking out of it. Everyone asks me, what is that? Well, that's not a sensor for that. That's the 360-degree camera that all cars are fitted with. So you sometimes see the footage from that used in broadcast. So that's what that little blister pack is. And occasionally you'll see them being swapped in and out for battery changes or whatever it is. So they are operated by FOM for all teams, and that's part of the broadcasting package, and one of the few mandatory camera housings that are located in the car. The other two mandatory camera housings you can see are either side of that Petronas logo on the tip of the nose. Now, you can see there's no openings in them on this, because there are no onboard cameras on the front of this car, because we're in a test. Now, we'll go into the Grand Prix, there will be onboard cameras located in these pods and on the Roll T camera as well. I think that one does have a camera in at the moment. They're the most visible ones, but sometimes you see other cameras dotted about the car, and I'm always interested to see which different angles the team at Formula One come up with. But let's work down the pit lane a little bit more and start speaking French, because Alpine is the next car in the row. Again, it just feels so far between the cars. Come back next week and this will be absolutely bustling with pit equipment. There'll be noses and spare bodywork laying all over it. There'll be just members of staff and people just wandering around. It's just really a strange feeling at this point. Middle of a test, sun's beginning to set, everybody's doing sort of long distance runs, learning about what they're doing. Here you can see this will be the floor space for Esteban Ocon in a week or so's time. His car will be sat here, but that car hasn't been built yet, or hasn't been finished yet. They'll be working on it probably in the back of the garage down at Alpine, and that's why these computer monitors are basically all on, well, the Windows screen and rather than the screensaver, because this side of the garage isn't fully active. Some of the crew may not even have flown out to Bahrain yet. Some of the crew flew out a week ago. So it's always just a little bit, let's wait and see what's going on. In the meantime, car 10, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, which is getting increasingly pink. The team's going to run two liveries at different points this year. Some will be in blue and pink as you see it, and sometimes to reverse it, have a lot more pink on the car. But you can see here, this is something you don't normally get to see, because Formula One cars are no longer allowed to refuel on the pit lane. They have to do the refueling in a different way, and they can only do it in the garage. And you can see that green drum there. That is a green drum of BP Ultimate fuel being pumped through the refueling rig, which is by the side of the car. So they're going to put some fuel in this Alpine, and then they're going to be sending it back out. And it all comes from these fuel churns that are travelled around the world. Then other typical work you tend to see teams doing at this point, this is all completely routine, are these little red objects which each team make for each car. And you can see, come around here, Bob, you can just see down there, if you have a look at the screen on that little unit here. So what they're doing here is they're measuring the front wing angle of the car. And that's what these little red things that they're mounting to the front wing are all about. The engineers take a look, They try and get the front wing to be exactly what they want, and you can see the little pocket, there you go. And they'll make these for each individual wing specifications, 3D print them, and I guess paint them bright red. So you can see there, little wing adjustment going on here, and then you'll see the wing angle change as the engineer, the mechanic, is raising that front to the upper flap ever so slightly by the look of it. Just try to get the car a little bit more where Pierre Gasly wants it, or at least the engineers tell Pierre Gasly he wants that a change being made. Spending a lot of time in the garage, McLaren. It's not going well for them as far as I can tell this test. They've spent an awful lot of time with the car sitting in the garage with various bits and pieces missing. The driver's seat's out of the car, in fact. In this case, as you're looking down there, you can see the seat. I'm guessing that will be, well, it's not for Lando Norris, actually. It's Roscoe Piastri's seat there. He's just sitting on the floor. I wonder if they're going to change over driver. Piastri's out of the car, but you can see where his bum would be placed normally, down in the seat, down there on the side. I'm not sure if the McLaren's fitted with a Magic sponsor changing logos, but let's keep on working down there, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. We won't get to the other end of the pit lane, which is I want to do before we start talking to Crofty and the team back in the commentary box, because I want to show everybody as much of the cars as possible, because pre-season testing is all about the cars and what's contained on the cameras and things like this. And it's not just the film cameras, it's the still cameras, which we like. And you have to have special permission to use one. You have to get a little sticker on your camera like that to be allowed to use it in the pit lane. I'm lucky enough to have one. So you will see some of these images dotted about in future various places. And Alfa Romeo, they've been quite quiet out on long runs, so we'll skip past them for now. These two boys have been standing out on the pit road basically all afternoon. They must be very hot under those shiny helmets. But we're about to see the green team, the Aston Martin, finally come in. Now, Fernando Alonso has done a lot of endurance racing. He's won the Le Mans 24 Hours. He's done the Dakar Rally. He's done the Indy 500-mile sweepstakes in Indianapolis. And now he seems to be trying to achieve the same in pre-season testing in the Aston Martin AMR 23. He is pounding in the laps. Last time I looked at the screen, which was probably an hour ago, he was over 90 laps. I haven't looked at the screen to see what he's on, but he's probably well over 100 by now. Here comes that Aston Martin, the big talking point on the car amongst many people online. And it's very hard to go, look, big backfire from the car. I hope you heard that, because that was quite spectacular. Is 110 laps for the Aston Martin team so far with Fernando Alonso. He must be tired, but for the oldest driver in Formula One, he's showing no signs of his fitness abating at all. And now, if you have a look down here, this is the bit that everybody wants to have a look at, because it just dips down so deeply, and you can see the sculpting shape of the side pods as you get set onto the car. And that shape, to me, looks really reminiscent of the Ferrari of last season. Now, everybody's calling this the Green Bull and saying, oh, it's a Red Bull copy. Nonsense, it's nothing like the Red Bull. You look at that side pod shape, that is straight out of Ferrari's textbook, but it just doesn't have those big cooling louvers. The front suspension is a push rod front suspension. Red Bull's a pull rod. This car is by no means a copy of the Red Bull. There are inspirations on this car from other cars. I see Mercedes inspirations and I see other details on it. But for me, it's looking like a reliable car. Yesterday, it proved to be quite a quick car, although you have to temper that because it is pre-season testing. You quite often see teams go on about this and do it all day long. But I'll hand you over to some other people who can talk all evening long, starting with David Croft.
Sam, we're going to listen to you all day long. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. And a great technical detail. And just showing as well why it's so important to have the garages open during testing. Do you remember the days when we used to come to testing and the garage doors were shut and we couldn't see what was going on?
Yeah.
Well, as fans, we do want to see it. Hi, Anthony Davidson and David Croft in the commentary box. Sam Collins, that was mega. Anthony Davidson, where do you want to start with the golden hour of testing on day 2?
Well, let's start with the lights getting lower. The cars are nice and shiny out there. Things looking nice and sparkly.
Yeah. Things at this time of night do look very sparkly. Things change under the lights, don't they?
They can, yeah.
Your appearance, for instance, I'm liking it.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you're just wearing it because it's cold?
Yeah, it's a bit cold in here.
Fair enough. Back to the action.
I'm not doing Vegas this year. Feeling a bit left out.
Do you want an invite to Vegas?
I think I'm busy, actually.
I'll get a twin room. You can come
It's
to
actually
Vegas.
quite comfortable.
It's a very comfy jacket, isn't it? I really like it. That is... that's going around the world with me, that is.
I'll give it back at some point, I promise.
The Vegas people are here, and there's a lot of chat about the things they're going to do for the first race in November, the penultimate round of the season. They have got some big plans.
I bet.
I can't say too much at the moment, sworn to secrecy. But I think it's going to be a race like no other. He said, but I did say, what we do want some details about is the track. What's it going to be like? You know, what's the speeds? What's the cornering speed? You know, how fast are the lap times all predicted? That information is coming soon.
Excellent.
Because we are there for the racing.
I've got a feeling it's going to be on the higher speed side of street tracks.
Yeah.
More kind of like Baku length straights.
Oh, Baku plus.
But with maybe Jeddah style cornering.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of just building that picture. That's what I would hope it to be anyway. And
I mean, Formula One cars.
Be a show.
Formula One cars racing down Frank Sinatra Boulevard, which is the official name of the strip. Frank Sinatra Boulevard. You imagine George Russell as he hurtles past the Bellagio with the fountains going off in the background. I mean, I say hurtles. I hope he's hurtling. It's a good word, hurtling.
Well, has he been hurtling today, though, Crofty?
Good point.
He's down there in P12 at the moment. His teammate sits in P14. And I know that Sam was saying that it hasn't really been a great test so far for the likes of McLaren. And I haven't seen much speed from this car that we're riding on board with now either. But look, it's still relatively early days. I think in this session now, we're going to see teams focusing on exactly this here in the Ferrari garage and the new tyres on the car, getting wheeled out by hand just to help it on its way. Comes Charles Leclerc. But this is the session where we're going to see a few more lap times, maybe the leaderboard changing at the moment. Verstappen leads Hulkenberg, Sainz, Sargent. Yeah, Charles Leclerc himself is in P5.
Conditions are good for some faster lap times as well. The wind is not as strong as it was last night.
No, and a slightly different direction as well. I did find my favourite windsock, or wind cone, as it's also called, on the way here up to the commentary box. And a bit of a different direction, like you say. Not the breeze is less gusty than it was this time yesterday. So, and there's more rubber on the track. So it will be a faster circuit right now than it was this time yesterday.
1:31.6. Max Verstappen has completed 18 laps, as you can see, is the fastest time of the day from Nico Hulkenberg with a 1:32.4. Hulkenberg taking over from his teammate Kevin Magnussen, who did the morning session after completing 67 laps. Verstappen taking over from Sergio Perez, who did 76 laps. Here then comes George Russell down to turn one. Little bit of a headwind into turn one, which helps your stopping distance. And then it's all about getting a really nice, smooth exit out of turn two and into three to carry all the way towards the hairpin.
Yeah, he's on more of a race run here. No DRS, and I could just see the rear lights flashing away as the car's in harvest mode on the way towards the apex of 4. Now towards turn 6. You have to be patient in that corner to open up turn 7, and that's where you want to be applying more throttle through turn 7. And now into turn 8. One of the tightest corners on the track before you go up and over this brow of the hill. You see, just that's a great shot. So you see the car come towards you, a little bump for good measure before you just swing it round and slow it down and turn at the same time and tighten the apex into steady braking and good rotation in the car to help pivot the car and get it in a straight line for the exit. Into 11, a faster corner. It's a medium speed corner taken in 4th gear. You see the speed on your right-hand side of your screen, climbing. As you go through the elevation of turn 12, slow it down again for turn 13. That's more of a medium speed corner taken in 3rd gear, and then up through the gears once more. 7th or 8th gear, depending on which kind of harvest mode you're running, what engine power you have in the car. Usually it'll be hanging on to 7th gear before that final couple of corners, 14, 15, takes you back onto the main straight. You want to avoid the curb on the exit especially when you're still cornering in turn 15. It can drag the car out of line, as we saw with Fernando Alonso this time yesterday.
Look, rear grip seems to be Mercedes' issue, and that's what we've been seeing in terms of struggles for this day and maybe a bit of yesterday as well.
But look at the rear end of the floor there, so much higher than it was last year at any point.
Yeah.
And that's why we're seeing better ride quality from the car.
But is that affecting the rear grip as well?
I think it's probably more that the car was just out of the window in terms of its balance earlier. Right. They're not alone in this. I saw lots of other cars. I saw the Aston Martin that we've been kind of raving about all week so far. That was struggling as well on the long run through turn 11, as Leclerc's just been. And I think the Williams as well, struggling with the rear end and traction. So they're not alone in that respect. It's just that we've spoken to Toto Wolff, he mentioned it, and then suddenly it becomes a big headline because it's Mercedes, it's a big team. But I'm seeing other teams definitely having the same issues. But you can work on that. You can take away a bit of mechanical grip from the front end of the car. You can take a bit of aerodynamic grip away from the front of the car by just taking away a bit of front wing. There's lots you can do to the car to help it out and save the rear tyres. And it's all just a learning process.
Right. Anthony Davidson, take your microphone off. I've got a present for you. We might need to get you in vision for this. But my good friends from the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix have just brought in, come on in, everybody. I've just brought in a little present just for you. That is your very own Vegas jacket. I'm going to put my jacket back on because it would be wrong to keep the sparkles all for myself. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see sartorial elegance in its finest, this is the smallest jacket we can find for you as well, which might be just a little bit big.
I don't mind.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that.
I'm in your club now, Crofty.
Hey.
I've been imitating you all week.
Yeah, you've done the commentary.
And it's another step closer.
To what?
To being you, mate.
Oh, baby. I love you. Yeah, that's your jacket. Isn't it great?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Jocelyn has come over with your present for today.
It's like Christmas has come round again.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much.
Can I talk about that man was Gunther Steiner. He is with Laura Winter
really?
now.
Excellent.
Laura.
He's not quite with me yet, and I'm still waiting to find my Vegas jacket as well, Crofty. I'm yet to find it. But here, with the grand entrance, I am now going to welcome, we need some sort of music or something, Mr. Gunther Steiner. For the
Look at that, baby.
Wow.
Vegas, baby.
Vegas, baby, indeed. Crofty is delighted. What do you make of the jacket?
No, what I make of the jacket and of Crofty, I was told Crofty can wear it, so I said, I mean, how did he wear it? How did he get into it?
With style. How did I get into it?
No, with Crofty always, you know, because he gave me a hard time yesterday, so I have to give him something back, you know, so Crofty, this is for you, you know, I wear it nicely.
I will leave that between you two boys to work out off air, that's fine. Oh, we've got a, okay, there we are. He's getting
Yeah.
all about the sponsors, get the sponsors out. Gunther, hi. It's brilliant to see you. Here we are for the 2023 season. How are you feeling ahead of this one? And the cars both look decent out there. They look reliable. They're up the timing sheets as well.
Yeah, it's difficult to say where we are. I mean, the most important thing is being reliable. Oh, fingers crossed, I've got one more day to go tomorrow, but today was flawless, so very good. Obviously, we try different things. Everybody's trying different things. So where we stuck up, we don't know really. Will be very tight this year, in my opinion, you know, tighter than ever, but which is good for the sport. Hopefully, we can get out on top of it. But up to now, also with Nico fitting in very well, so far, so good.
When I spoke to Kevin earlier, he seemed very keen to start to put some pressure down, to start to lean into it and get some of the performance running out of the car. I bet you guys are itching to see what it's capable of.
Absolutely. You know, you always do as much as you say, we test just to get the reliability right and to find out what changes in the setup of the car do. In the end, you want the speed. But I think the speed we will find, or I think in general, the speed of all the cars we will just find out next week on Saturday. Because as I said, it's so tight. I think 5 kilos or 10 kilos of fuel difference will be the difference between P8 and P20.
as resplendent as you look and as great as it is to hear from you, I've heard there is a red flag. George Russell has stopped out on track. So, Gunther, for now, au revoir, and Crofty, back to you.
Thanks, Laura. Apologies, Laura, that we had to cut Gunther short there. But there is the sight of George Russell stood by the side of the track after his Mercedes car ground to a halt amidst all the jollity today. There's a serious test going on, and this is a seriously bad time for any team to have issues on the track and to lose track time because, well, conditions that much better for more representative night race running than they were during the heat of the day. The track temperature has obviously come down a little bit to 24 degrees.
Let's have a listen. Yeah, so there was a message that popped up on his dash, and I'm pretty sure it said something about the hydraulics. It would make sense that he's stuck in fourth gear as well. As soon as he was told on the radio, obviously, yeah, because the hydraulics controls all of the gear shift mechanism as well in the car, along with the power steering, and yeah, look, he's fighting with the steering as well. I think we're looking at a hydraulic issue there. So
and
now
it's gone into anti-stop.
Yeah, because he's still in fourth. So yeah, he had no clutch. That's also controlled by hydraulics. So I'd say hydraulic issue there on the Mercedes.
Hour and 34 to go the session. Hydraulic issue. That's going to be a struggle to get fixed.
And it's got it's got the green light on the top of the car as well. So not a hybrid issue. He didn't really do the, as we used to call, the KERS jump, where you clear yourself and the car at the same time. He looked a bit more relaxed than that and getting out of the car. So yeah, I'd say not a hybrid issue on the car, nothing to do with the electrics, it's more hydraulics. And is there any oil spilling out the bottom of the car, which would be the hydraulic fluid? I haven't seen anything yet, but yeah, the team and himself were quick to react on that one. And I'd say all the systems were doing what they should have been in terms of the warning, so that message on the dash, wish I could see it again, but it was a little bit blurry on our screen. Oh dear.
I'm going to say hour 34. By the time they get it back again, are they going to be able to fix that to get the Mercedes back on the track once more to give George Russell a bit more time in the car? That's concerned faces, as you would expect, in that Mercedes garage. Simon Cole's there, the chief engineer, the man in charge. Reliability is his thing, and what a good job Mercedes have done with the reliability over this hybrid era.
Let's see. So, see if you can give this a read as well. Is it at an angle when it happens? Yeah.
It was a little flicker, wasn't there, before he changed from third up to fourth?
I did see the message. Maybe it came in around this next corner in turn 4 through that. I thought it happened around 1 and 2. Oh, there we go. Hydraulic failure? It is, isn't it?
Yeah. See, that's the best thing about nighttime racing. We get to see all the displays on the dashboard. So just as he was in turn 4, hydraulic failure pops up on the dash, and that's why you see no gear changes whatsoever, and he's stuck in fourth gear all the way down to just beyond turn 10 when finally it comes to a grinding halt because he hasn't got the momentum, he hasn't got the speed.
Well, you know the protocol as a driver, when you have a hydraulic issue, you don't change gear. And this is the bit where he tries to turn into turn 9 and 10, where the steering clearly gets a bit heavier for him.
Yeah.
And then, finally, the revs die and grinds to a halt. And the clutch, he's got no clutch, so it, completely stalls the engine.
And then there is silence.
Well, the anti-stall actually tried to kick in. That's when the automated clutch mechanism kicks in when it feels the engine revs go too low. Yeah. And that didn't even work.
Could he have gone a lot wider to try and take more speed through to try and get that car back to the pits, or was he just fighting a losing battle at that stage?
Yeah, to get through turn 10 in fourth gear, that's asking a lot, I think, of minimum revs from the engine.
He would have had to have gone a lot wider.
Well, and he also might have been told to stop the car.
That's another
which he probably was.
Yeah. So we have a red flag, which has to be said, is unusual for this test session.
Only the second red flag.
Well, we had obviously the red flag
real red flag,
test, but the real one was Felipe Drugovich yesterday. After about 6 minutes. Well, here at nearly 6 o'clock Bahrain time, we've got our second. Talking of Felipe Drugovich, he is back in the car tomorrow. Aston Martin have announced that Felipe will take the morning session, Fernando the evening session. Surprised?
A little bit, yeah, because he that means he hasn't had an evening session at all. Then as Drugovich,
No, he hasn't.
So he hasn't had the circuit in the best conditions. That's all been for Fernando. Does that mean that Lance is on his way back? Well, am I reading too much into that? Does that mean that
in terms of Lance, the latest from the team, Lance Stroll missing this test, of course, because of an injury he sustained whilst training on his bike in Spain. The latest is that the team are expected to issue an update on Monday or Tuesday next week, but that might even be Wednesday. And I would imagine we'll do whatever they can to give Lance Stroll a chance to prove his fitness to get him racing here in Bahrain. But Felipe tomorrow, Fernando as well tomorrow, morning session for Felipe, evening session for Fernando Alonso, and we wish Lance Stroll all the best in his recovery from that training injury. Rachel Brooks is trackside. Rachel, as you made your way down to see George Russell at speed?
I have, Crofty, and I've just spoken to him as well, and just asked him where it happened, because he came past us at turn 8. I was trackside with Jack Doohan. He came past us at turn 8, and it didn't sound right, but he said it happened in turn 4, and then he's got down as far as here trying to get the car back, and unfortunately had to stop here. So yes, he's right in front of us at the moment here trackside, and he just said to us, we said everything all right. He said, I'd rather be in the car, because this is so important for all of them to get time in the car, isn't it, Jack?
No, very important. They were just ahead of a long run, and this doesn't obviously just set back now, but depending on how deep the issue is, it's going to set them back for the rest of the night, and that's just going to delay George's running and George trying to get comfortable in the car, so it's not ideal for him or the team.
We saw him go past us before as well, round at turn 8, and we'd been watching cars there for a little while. I wouldn't particularly see anything wrong with it, though, did we?
No, nothing seemed wrong. Like he said, I think they were stuck in 4th gear. He was advised not to change gears. So just while they're probably assessing the issue, trying to diagnose it, just better off to not change gears and keep everything safe so that they can fully reveal it later on.
And when you are doing these testing sessions as the driver, it's your first chance back in the car before the season. You want every minute of it possible, don't you?
No, 100%, especially for these guys with one car and sharing the car through the day. For George, it's so important. Lewis had not a smooth session, I don't really know, but they had a full running session this morning. Then George will be hopping in the car, and he wants as much time as possible for the rest of this test. So to not be able to maximise that isn't ideal.
The mechanics have come out here to join him, Crofty, to try and help get this car back as quick as possible, because there's only an hour and a half left now, of course, of this day's running and day 2 of this 3-day test. So they're going to try and get this back onto lift it up, get it on the low loader, and back to the Mercedes garage, Crofty.
Yeah, and obviously this is a sensitive time as well for the team. You don't want anyone seeing the underneath of your car, so that's why they're being so careful in trying to cover the thing up before it gets lifted onto the truck. So it's like a double impact in a way of having a failure out on circuit. The fact that then there might be some spy photos that you really don't want to get out because of that failure.
Well, on the subject of spy photos, if the car is just sat there like that, what can photographers take that other teams can learn from?
Well, it's the underside of the car.
Yeah.
So as soon as that gets lifted into the air, they're probably going to be quite careful in minimising the amount of exposure that part of the car that rarely gets seen.
Because that's where the magic happens, right?
Exactly. That's the part where these ground effect cars today, it's always been a crucial part of the car, the floor, and how it generates its grip, but even more so today with this ground effects era of Formula One that we come back into.
What they actually need to do is to take that black covering and then just hold it in front of all the photographers while it gets loaded onto the low loaders. Yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be all of the photographers. They're all given kind of missions by other teams that tell them where to be taking photos of each other's cars, and so it's like I say, it's a part that isn't really exposed that often.
No, except in crashes or when it stops and gets picked up by the JCB.
Exactly.
Oh dear, that's that.
So was it a sensor issue?
Yeah, can it be just a sensor issue? And if it is just a sensor issue, that's probably a better thing because it's easier to fix.
Oh, definitely. And then you will see the car back out there much quicker. But I haven't seen any of that telltale oil streak coming out the back of the car, which when it's been a bit of an epic failure in the hydraulics, you will see.
That's massively frustrating for a team, though, if it is just a sensor issue. So much has been wasted as a result.
Yeah, but they will take that. Because, it's time out for the rest of the team, the rest of the competition as well at this point as the red flag flies. So right now, they're not losing out any ground compared to their competition. But as your car sits in the garage and the green flag flies again, then that's when the damage is done.
I'd imagine it's going to get busy when we do finally get a green light here, because we are approaching that time when, if you can be on track, as part of your plan, you're going to want to be on track. As I say, track temperature now about 24 degrees. It was about 44 degrees in the heat of the morning/afternoon session.
And I always feel for the marshals and the recovery team in this situation because, these brand new cars out there and the cost cap in place, and you can't afford to go damaging anything. There's a lot of pressure on their shoulders, I feel, in this operation. But they are trained for it, being overseen as well by the team members, of course.
The amount of money the teams receive for crash damage for the sprint racing has been increased, hasn't it, this year? You talk about, fixing cars under this cost cap era, but because the sprint events have been doubled from 3 to 6, we go to Baku, to Austria, to Belgium, to Qatar at Lusail, to Austin, and to Sao Paulo for our sprint racing this season. Because there are more events to add to the racing, and it's the racing that can induce crashes more than a practice and a qualifying session, the amount for each sprint has now doubled to $300,000 from this season onwards. It's a fixed amount per team for damage. And the cost cap has gone up a little bit this year, of course, because we've gone to 23 races, or gone up from its original proposed total. The idea of the cost cap is that we started at a figure to make it a bit easier for the teams, and then we reduced it for each year for a couple of years to get down to what was decided was that acceptable level. Are they happy, do you reckon? See, look, as it gets raised a little bit now, they're going to cover it even more.
That's exactly what I thought would happen, yeah.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing left to chance. Oh, apart from the car goes down at the rear.
Just be a bit careful with that.
Tell you what, a couple of years ago, Crofty, it would have been the complete opposite way around. The car would have just tilted dramatically to the front because they were able to run a much further forward weight distribution. Back in the days before there was a stricter regulation to bring the weight distribution further rearward, the car would have tipped down, nose down.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it's gonna, now they're having to physically pull the car down at the front as it wants to rock backwards.
Which actually
that was to help
hadn't really taken into consideration at all.
Yeah, and that rule came into place to help the lesser funded teams because they would say that the weight distribution of an F1, it was a bit like a currency.
Yeah.
And, it would cost a lot of money and resources that went into trying to shift the weight further forward with your car design and to place the weight where you wanted, low down, more towards the front. And that's something that the lesser funded teams just couldn't do. They were fighting a losing battle in that respect. So they thought, well, if we can minimise the damage and make it more of a fair fight by keeping the weight distribution in an easier, like a more achievable position, percentage, then it helps out those teams.
Which is something.
And you can't really argue with that. Yeah.
I'm trying to find, just for the sport of it, an argument to what you're saying, but I can't. Not like the red flag situation. You caused a right brouhaha on social media with that one. Lots of people agreeing with you. And then some people thinking, no, you're absolutely wrong.
Good thing to say,
I actually don't disagree with your principle in theory that if you get a red flag, then you shouldn't be able to change things on the car and you shouldn't be able to change tyres. The trouble comes with, if you've had an accident, you don't want to see that many cars out of the race if they don't have to be out of the race, and they can't go back out with damage on the car. And you have to try and find a one-size-fits-all rule for that, because otherwise you're into endless amounts of scrutineering, which takes way too much time and resources.
I think with that, then you just start at the back. If you've got damage or a puncture or whatever, and you have to make any change to your car, you just start at the back of the queue.
Talking of queues, so when you were trying to do your commentary at the start, and only Kevin
forced me into.
Yeah, but you were a willing participant on that one, and you enjoyed it with the plucky Kevin Magnussen bursting off the line.
You made a great start.
He made a great start. But what should have happened on that one, apparently, is that only the car at the front react to the lights. The other ones are supposed to wait until the one in front is gone. So Lando Norris was actually doing the procedure right. Fair play to Lando Norris.
Yeah.
We didn't know the rules. He knew the rules. Others might not have known quite so much. Thank you very much to a couple of people in the paddock who told me that during the luncheon interval.
It makes a lot of sense, really, doesn't it? Because the FIA would never want to take any chances when it comes to safety, and it is the safest thing to do, and that's why when we have the dummy starts at the end of a session on the track, on the grids, they do it one by one. You can only go when the car in front of you is gone, and you wait your turn, basically, and that's what they wanted, because that's the safest thing to do. It makes sense, but just goes to show how hardwired the drivers are. /stroke competitive they
it's
are.
Like Pavlov's dog.
Lights have gone out.
It's like Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
But that's what you're trained to do. How are your reactions?
Lights go out and they're off. But it wasn't for Lando. He did the right thing. He stuck to the rule that was there today.
As one would expect.
Valtteri Bottas in the Race of Champions. He went when a light went out, didn't he?
Yes.
Unfortunately, it was the wrong light. He reacted to the light that went out. And he said, look, I'm trained to go when the light goes out.
Yeah.
I don't wait for a green light.
He's just off. His dad's here, by the way, watching testing today.
He is?
Valtteri's dad, yeah. 60 years old, Valtteri's dad. I have to say, looks very young for a 60-year-old man from Finland.
It's that healthy Finnish lifestyle.
Yeah, it is. I said, I'm obviously...
All those saunas and...
I'm living in the wrong part of the world. He said, red wine, white wine, sparkling water. I said, maybe I need to go more on the sparkling water quantity, and that'll help me in the future.
Yeah, you've got the other two covered.
Yeah.
Comprehensively covered.
Certainly not. I had a glass for ages. But yeah, no, he's here. He's here with his son. We were chatting mullets as well. How's the mullet? Which is inspired, by the way, the Valtteri Bottas mullet.
What, his dad's got one as well?
No, his dad has not got a mullet. That much I was completely sure of. Valtteri's, as we will get going again in a minute's time, his hairstyle inspired by a little coaching session he did in Melbourne last year, when he spent some time with some Aussie rules footballers. I said he could play for the West Coast Eagles. Well, maybe Collingwood instead. I don't know. But he so enjoyed the moment. He actually wanted to grow the mullet and come back to Australia, and blend in with the squad. There's a big space in that Mercedes garage waiting for a car. And there's a whole load of TV crews down there waiting to see it come back in. We, though, want to see a green light at the end of the pit lane. And talking of Melbourne, there is Melbourne's finest, Oscar Piastri, waiting to go back out in his McLaren.
Yeah, he's one of 2 rookies this year.
2 or 3, depending on
2 or
your
3,
on that
yeah.
one.
Let's say 2 for now.
Nick De Vries doesn't want to be a rookie, so there we go.
And yeah, obviously they'll be looking for all the track time they can get before next weekend.
Right, practice starts at the end of the pit lane for Nick De Vries. That's for Nick De Vries, for Oscar Piastri. I've got Nick De Vries on my brain now, who currently has the 12th fastest time of the day, and he has done 47 laps. Oscar Piastri, meanwhile, is the 8th fastest time of the day. He's done 35 laps.
Actually, it was Bahrain. It was this very circuit where in F2, Oscar Piastri first caught my eye as being supremely quick.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I think he was on pole position, if my memory serves me well. He's right at the sharp end anyway. And it did strike me that he was a bit too kind in wheel-to-wheel racing. I saw that progress as the season went on. And I think he was definitely a driver at the end where he could get his elbows out a bit more. But he certainly started the campaign in F2 a little bit on the timid side. I wonder if he'll approach Formula 1 in the same way, or whether he's now a changed driver. And apparently that was the similar style he had from go-karting as well. Really? So yeah, I think he's been a driver that can kind of lead from the front, and had to learn a bit more in F2 to really get stuck in a bit more and kind of hold your ground.
Won Sprint Race 2, Oscar Piastri, here in Bahrain. Had mixed fortunes in the other ones. 5th in the first Sprint Race, didn't feature. The feature race was classified, but he didn't actually finish that race. Now, a few more cars coming out onto the track. So Rachel Brooks, who had gone out to see George Russell at speed and then found he was there for a chat where she didn't quite expect it, can now, with Jack Doohan, bring us some trackside action, I hope. Over to you, Rachel.
Yes, indeed, Crofty. This is where we came first of all, actually, when we heard George had stopped. So we ran down to turn 10. But this is Nico. We've got the Alfa Romeo going through here at the moment, and now the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg coming past us. And then the Red Bull. And I was asking Jack, when you come through this section on this circuit here, what are you looking at? Where are your braking points? What lines are you looking to take? And are there any particular challenges through 6, 7, 8 now that...
No, very. So exiting turn 4, you have to bring the car back over to the right to try and position yourself as best as possible for turn 6. There's a bit of an escape road before turn 6 where that turn 5 kink is, and there's a little bit of a curb that I use, and I'm pretty sure everyone uses as a sort of brake point, and then a piece of track that enables you to kind of open up turn 6 before you throw the car in. You know, it's quite tricky whether you prioritize turn 6 to flow the speed through and sacrifice a bit of 7, or you try and make them very even. Something that's difficult is on the exit here of turn 7, you have the double curb, and seeing quite a lot of people taking too much of that exit curb and ending on that outside wall. So it's a crucial part of the circuit.
We're just watching Logan Sargent come through, and you said there are options for braking into turn 8. People choose different lines or different options, I guess. And this is Charles Leclerc coming through now.
No, the car's very combined coming through turn 7, and you want to bring it back to the left-hand side as quickly as possible to try and be as straight as braking for turn 8, as especially over the course of the lap, you can either have quite a lot of rear locking at the latter part of braking, or initially pinch to the front right tyre. So to try and make that car as straight as possible, where that's bringing it back to the left and having a straight braking, or really just angling out to the left, like I've seen Lewis Hamilton doing quite a lot, is angling out to the left, braking straight, and kind of braking over the left-hand side of that curb before opening up the turn.
When you say the car's combined, what do you mean?
It's when there's quite a lot of load still coming from, so the car's not, center and flat. As exiting here in turn 7, it's got a lot of load on the right-hand side of the car, and it's almost squatting to that right rear. So then when you're bringing it over for turn 11, I think it was just the Haas that you can see the smoke, just had a lock up into turn 8. So when you're bringing the car back over to the left, it's too short period of a time to have everything settled. So the car's going to be combined on braking and not flat.
The AlphaTauri had a lock up as well. This is the Red Bull going through turn 8. no such problems for them.
No, I saw yesterday when I was watching from the grandstand above, I could see Lewis struggling a lot with the rear. Every time he was trying to turn the car in, the rear just wasn't sticking with him and kind of sliding like a drift motion through there. One car that looks very strong is the Aston Martin. I was watching them through turn 8, 11 and the final turn. Rear looks very planted and it seems like they're able to have a lot of trust to really turn the car in.
It's Logan Sargent going through in the Williams now past us, down towards turn 8. Is this a fun part of the track, or is this a challenging? Which bits of this circuit do you enjoy driving, and which
Turn
bits?
6 and 7 for sure. You know, it's a crucial part. The start of Sector 2, a crucial part of Sector 2 because it's, you know, medium to high speed and there's a lot on the line. You know, it's how much do you take? How ready is those front tires at a high speed corner? You're throwing the car in, having trust and hoping it's going to stick. So you kind of get through turn 6 and 7. You can exhale because like, okay, you know, I've got through that tricky section. Now I've got the slow speed corners to go through.
Can you talk us through Oscar coming through here?
So depending on what sort of run he's on, it seems like he's at the start of a race run. Through 6 and 7, he was actually pretty mutual through them both, not really exiting too wide of 6, and gave himself a nice line through 7. So he's probably at a stage where he's having to look after those tyres, you know, early on in that stint.
We've just seen the Alpine go past us there. We're hoping to see the Aston Martin come out as well in a minute. When you said it looked really planted, what do you think particularly that Aston Martin seems to be doing well this year?
The rear of the car just seems like it's behaving super well. You know, something with this car at the moment, the traction's very poor. It's super difficult with the new regulations to have the car, you know, working front to rear mutually. So for them having that trust to throw the car in and knowing that it's going to stick is really beneficial for them as well, to be able to, out of the slow speed turn 8, as the race is evolving, they're starting to struggle with that rear tyre. You know, turn 8, you can have that over rotation with the rear locking, and then you have to ask for so much traction for turn 8 and then turn 10. So knowing that you have a reliable rear that you can trust and lean on is just going to be so important for them.
Great stuff. Well, we're going to say watch a little bit more down here, Crofty. It's great being down here at the track. I'm envious of your sequin jacket, though. If anyone on this team wears one, I would have thought it would have been me first. But you go for it, you two.
Well, Rach, we wanted to break with tradition a little bit this year. Ant and myself are auditioning for Strictly. Strictly not doing dancing. That is not our bag. But I think we'd look pretty good on a dance floor. To be honest, with those jackets on. I've got a lot of tweets in the last 10 minutes going, where can I get one of those jackets? At the moment, I don't believe they are on general sale. The minute they are,
really,
I'll let you guys know, and I'll take 10% of all the commission. If we just go and get a few jackets, a bag of sequins, we could do some sewing tonight. You know?
You're clearly a trendsetter.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I'll leave, you know, the trend setting to the likes of Pierre Gasly, who does a lot of work with fashion, of course, or did when he's in his AlphaTauri days. To Lewis Hamilton, of course, who's led the way in all of that, and to Gunther Steiner. I saw Fred Vasseur trying on the jackets earlier as well. All the team principals are having a go, yeah.
Now that I would have wanted to see.
Well, so Sylvia, his PR representative, was like, you know, come on, have the red jacket for Ferrari. And he's like, no, I want Crofty's green jacket because I've got a red T-shirt on. I've got like green, white, and red. It's the Italian flag. We'll do that.
I want to see if we can get Andreas Seidel wearing one.
Yes, he needs to.
That's the mission.
That is definitely the mission.
Because he texted me just saying, hey, what's going on with you?
Well, we'll explain later. Right, so we've got drivers out on the track, and we have got an hour and 7 minutes of this second day of testing to go. And we're riding on board with Fernando Alonso, who, as you can see, has just set a personal best through the first sector. Now, this time yesterday, that Aston Martin really started to come alive, and Alonso is pushing to the extent that he's set another personal best. Top speed of about 185 miles an hour before the brakes are applied through the final couple of corners, and Fernando crosses the line to go second fastest. Now he's about 8 tenths off Max Verstappen, but hey, and we've ended up at the moment where we finished off yesterday with Verstappen and Alonso first and second.
Yeah, and it's probably a more realistic difference between the cars, you'd have to say, than it was yesterday. I mean, as fast as the Aston Martin is with Fernando behind the wheel, to end up on the same time as Verstappen yesterday, you have to take that with a pinch of salt.
It was better
today,
conditions on track.
Yeah, and I think, the Red Bull really yesterday looked to me like the car was heavy all day.
Yep.
They didn't really push that hard. This is the car I want to see, though, the Ferrari on new tyres. Whether he is or not on this lap is yet to be seen, but here comes Charles Leclerc up towards turn 4, but there's no DRS open, so I'd say he's still focusing on race runs. But yeah, I mean, every time I've seen the Aston Martin on new tyres, it looks good. Well balanced, the grip level looks high. Yeah, Leclerc's over 2 seconds down already in the first split. But earlier on in the day, in the hotter conditions, it looked like the rear was definitely moving around more. Yeah, he was one of the drivers, was Alonso, where he was struggling, similar to Lewis Hamilton at the time, with the rear snapping around and sliding. And the car suddenly didn't look quite as good as it was when it's on, I know it sounds stupid to say, when it's on the new tyres, but a very different balance came his way, basically. And makes me think that come race day next week, if we have these slightly warmer conditions, that stays, because last year it actually got pretty cool in the evenings here.
Yeah, it did.
This time around seems like it's quite a bit warmer, and that's going to take its toll on the tyre wear as well, the tyre life. So, and the cars, they seem to be quite a bit quicker than last year at this stage as well, so that's going to put more energy through the tyres. You'll get more degradation. So yeah, we'll see whether other teams have to mitigate that with the balance of the car and carry a bit of a deficit through qualifying. Not have the car exactly where you want it to be in qualifying, not have the front end as strong as it could be to then serve you better in the race, to have a more balanced car. Less front grip helps to look after the rears more.
Yeah. Fernando Alonso had done a cool-down lap before he sets off once again, but no green sectors. He's either doing... I think he might be doing a double cool-down lap, to be fair, because there's nothing green coming up in the mini sectors. Nick de Vries, meanwhile,
on a new set of tyres on this out lap, personal best so far 33.1. It looks like new set of the. This got the red stripe as well, so the C5, the softest tyre of the lot.
Now he's got the Ferrari, he's got the Alfa Romeo right behind him, and was not in any mood whatsoever.
Oh, and he's on another new set of tyres as well, isn't he? So the Alfa Romeo, that was a bit of a fight for track position there on their outlaps,
He was in no mood for letting Zhou Guanyu past, because what he didn't want was then to have to slow down himself and rather ruin his approach to what will be a push lap for Nick de Vries.
Here we go then, with Nick de Vries. Quick Nick. On the one down. That's what I did. He was amazingly quick in the LMP2 category in World Endurance. But here in the F1 car, into turn 1 he comes, pinch the corner, open up turn 2, early on the power, as early as you dare, to carry that momentum up through the next DRS zone towards turn 4, bring the car to the left-hand side as we see the Mercedes get wheeled back into the pits. Finally, they'll be able to see what's wrong with that car as we go back to Nick now. Towards turn 6, personal best, 0.3 down in that first sector. The car looks good, nice and agile through 6 and 7, as you'd expect. Now into one of the slowest corners. A little bit of a handful of opposite lock there. Maybe carried a little bit too much speed, expected a bit too much from the car. Car sparking away, locks up just momentarily. Nicely done through turn 10. He got away with that tiny lock-up as he still met the apex. Now on the run down towards turn 11, grabs a bit of that extra curb on the right-hand side. Another corner where you've got to be early on the power to take you up round the hill, up the hill of turn 11 and 12. Slow it down again, 0.6 down at turn 13. It's been a good lap so far for Nick. Keep a check on those track limits on the exit of 13. Now down that final, back straight towards turn 14, 15. Brake dust flies as it's a heavy braking zone into that corner, and again the rear of that AlphaTauri just snapping away slightly. It's typical Nick de Vries style, that on a hard push lap goes second fastest with that time. We have to take that one with a pinch of salt as well, because it's on the softest tyre compared to other cars around him.
When you say typical Nick de Vries style,
he likes to pusher car.
Right.
He's
Carries it a
ragged.
bit.
He's got a ragged style, definitely. Quick, very, very quick. But he lets the car dance around, that's for sure.
Joe Guan Yu did a 1:33.186. The Alfa Romeo that rather got hampered by Nick de Vries when they were jockeying for track position. And that's only, 16 thousandths of a second slower than Joe's best time of the day. Max Verstappen, as you can see, is back out in the garage. Fernando Alonso has pitted. He did do another push lap and then pitted after that.
Just watching that Red Bull Crofty through 12, 13. They can still run that car low. It still looks lower than most out there. And it's the ride quality of the thing that's most impressive. It's got agility when he needs it. He opens his DRS just to make sure he can get past the Haas comfortably and get back onto the racing line for turn 1. And it's going everywhere he places it. It really doesn't look like a struggle for him at all. The other drivers will be looking at this thing in envy, I'm sure.
Well, he used a bit of DRS to get himself past Nico Hülkenberg, then didn't need DRS to power away up the next straight.
Yeah, exactly. He just used it as an overtaking tool, really. It's really why it's there. Actually, I think when it first came along on the scene, it was sold to us as it would help the drivers to get close enough to overtake. And that's
the idea of it, to allow one driver to pull alongside
or
the
at
other
least
driver.
Close enough.
Well, it was to allow one driver to pull alongside the other before they get to the braking zone, and then it's up to the drivers to who brakes late to sort it all out.
But to try and calculate that is very difficult to manage, I'm sure, from the FIA side of things. But
there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Yeah.
Weather conditions have quite an effect, where the wind is blowing and all that malarkey.
The natural discrepancy between the straight line speed of a car running more downforce or less downforce, whether one's got fresher tyres or older tyres, so you exit the corner better. And then we see just simple passes like we saw there, just one car fly past the other in a straight line to the point where they can even pull back onto the racing line. And that was never the idea. That wasn't the intention of DRS.
A lot of people still don't like DRS. I am of the view that I do think it helps the overall spectacle, and I do think we see way more overtakes as a result of it, and a lot of them are still pretty dramatic, and I don't mind it at all. I've come to appreciate what DRS can bring, and you don't want to see a procession all the time, and it rather negates what the clever engineers have done in terms of creating cars with an awful lot of turbulent wake in the past that you can't get close to. Now we have the new regulations from last year. Do you need DRS as much? Well, they're going to tinker a little bit with it this year. I think some tracks you still need it. Australia, for instance, is going to have a 4th DRS zone this year.
Well, they toyed with the idea last year, didn't they?
Took it away.
And then took it away at the last minute.
But fine, if it helps the spectacle of racing, I don't mind it at all. And the argument, well, we never needed to use it in the old days, it doesn't really work with me, given how different the cars are to how they used to be. This is not the same sport as it was 25 years ago in terms of the cars that you see on the track. They're vastly different.
Well, for a start, they're much bigger. They're wider, they're longer. And they rely much more on downforce these days than they did back in the old days as well. And they had the boost to play with back in the old days, which in a way was a bit like a DRS. They could turn the boost up and down. I wish we could have that element. We have the battery packs in Formula One cars, and I wish we could create a bit more organic racing by using cleverly that tool, by giving you that boost of power, over 100 horsepower of power.
Drivers do use it, don't they? They have that overtake button at their disposal.
They do, but it's not enough. It needs to be more horsepower to make a difference, and that's what they had back in the old days of the turbo boost era, and that was quite fun, and in a way was a bit more organic, but it was still used as an overtaking tool. And DRS, I described it once as a necessary evil these days. I still think we would have less exciting racing if we didn't have it. It doesn't mean I like it. I would like to see Formula 1 without it. I would like to see the cars have smaller wings still and more reliance on ground effects. Yes, they'd be a bit slower, but I'm not sure that people would really care that much if they were a couple of seconds slower. They were back in, say, 2016, for example. They were narrower cars, skinnier tyres, and they had less downforce. And we don't really know, you know, when you think back to when Rosberg won the championship, it didn't seem like a slow car at all that he was driving.
It wasn't at the time. Might seem like a slower car now because we've got used to the faster cars, but you can't necessarily see that much difference in the speed. It's only a few miles an hour.
It's the wings that really create that turbulence, the dirty air, which creates that natural buffer that you can't do anything with if your car behind. And then that pushes you to have DRS. So yeah, that's my view on it.
To me, it's part and parcel of racing in Formula One now, but don't make it too easy, and that's why I'm glad it's going to be looked at, because it needs reassessing and reevaluating pretty much every race after it's being used, so that you can look to make it in the future back to that, right, pull alongside and then sort it out in the braking zone. One thing I do like in terms of DRS this year, in the sprint races, they're trialling DRS to be enabled 1 lap earlier. So, it's 2 laps after the start, it'll be 1 lap after the start, or the restart, or a safety car restart. You can't have it on the first lap. That wouldn't be right. But second lap, we're gonna be able to have DRS now, and I think that's a good idea in the sprint races, because sprint should all be about overtaking. We'll talk more about those in a minute and try and compute, is it 1, 2 or 3 laps of a sprint race we're doing in Spa this year? Oh no, it might be a bit more than that, I know, but it seems a strange one to use Spa as a sprint race because it is the longest lap on the track. We'll discuss that in a moment. Ted Kravitz is standing by in the paddock to talk to us.
Thank you very much, Crofty. Yes, you talk about clever engineers. Well, I'm joined by one of the cleverest of all time in Formula One, Pat Symonds. He needs no introduction, so it's time, Pat, for our annual Geek Fest. And we've chosen a perfect moment to come down, because we can actually have a look at the car that's dominated winter testing so far, and that's the Red Bull RB19. And what do you like about this car?
Well, I think, Ted, that what we're seeing here is what we're seeing a lot of in the new cars this year. We're not seeing the revolution, and we saw that last year. And what we're seeing now is the evolution. Now, I think if you look at that car, it's hard to spot the differences. But I think that there have been some fundamentals. So, porpoising was a big issue last year. And the FIA, as part of the measures to try and reduce that a little bit, made some changes to the floor. They've lifted the outer edges by 15 millimetres. They lifted the throat by 10 millimetres. And these are things to take these surfaces away from the ground, try and make the porpoising better. So what are the aerodynamicists been doing? Well, they've obviously had to re-optimise. And, whenever this happens, it happens time and time again, where you get a rule change that takes away some of your performance. Your initial target is straight away to try and find that performance back again. And I think, talking to people up and down the pit road, I think that generally they've found that performance back again. They lost a few percent, they've got it back. But I think the other thing we see on a car like the Red Bull, everyone last year was running really scared of weight. And even, a top team like Red Bull, a dominant team like Red Bull, was still running overweight, I think, at the end of the season. So a lot of work will have been going into getting that weight off, using it effectively, adding a little bit of ballast. So I think those are the sort of things we're looking at this year.
Yeah, we had the birth of a new verb, to lightweight. And everybody has lightweighted their chassis this year, not just Red Bull, but absolutely everybody. And how hard is that to do? Because you can never make a chassis heavier than it needs to be in year 1 of a new rules regulation, but in year 2, how hard must it be to
It is hard, Ted, and of course, you've got these very, very stringent safety tests that the chassis has to go through. But if you look at the Red Bull, we can't see it very well at the moment because they've got the cooling fan in there, but little things like that inlet duct being a little bit smaller means you can make your roll hoop a little bit smaller. Means you saved a little bit of weight, and you've actually, in this case, saved it at the top of the car. But most of that weight saving won't be visible things. It'll be areas of the suspension, there'll be areas of packaging. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's a very expensive thing to do, but, you know, it's instant performance. There's no argument about it. If you save a kilogram off your car, you're going to go 0.03 quicker. That's a fact. That's physics.
Okay, actually, for testing, there's quite a lot of activity in this garage at the moment. I was kind of expecting Max Verstappen to come in, but they're getting towards the end.
Yeah, exactly. And they are getting towards the end of the day. The track temperature's coming down. We haven't got the sunlight on it anymore. This is a time when you can start setting some fast times. That sort of thing's not too important to a team like Red Bull. And we've seen Perez has done a very impressive race distance today, which has further underlined the fact that I think they're still the dominant team. But nevertheless, they'll be going through their tyres now, running slightly lighter fuel loads, setting those sort of headline times that everyone likes to look at, but actually are very, very difficult to interpret.
Yeah, that's pretty frenetic activity for testing. I do like on the Red Bull the gullies that they put in underneath the side pod.
Yeah.
It looks to be, when you saw the Flovis paint on them, they look to be hitting every single point that they wanted. It's
exactly. And that's all about getting this high energy air to the rear of the car, getting it clean, getting it to sort of help the diffuser, extracting air from underneath the car.
What about Ferrari then? I think they're coming in for a pit stop as well, so we'll just stay clear of their pit box. But they've taken a concept that was obviously very, very quick. They have talked about the power unit, how they have a smaller turbo with longer inlets that helps them get to sort of VMAX, or maximum speed on the straight, quite quickly. And we've seen that on the GPS traces here as well, now that they've perfected that engine. We'll just stay clear of the mechanics.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, you know, because when you want to add performance to a car, a lot of it is about getting out of corners and really trying to, you know, use your power at the beginning of the straight. Even on the Red Bull, there's a subtle change on the rear suspension that I think has been done to aid traction, which is a similar sort of philosophy. The interesting thing to me with the Ferrari is looking at the little bit of data that we do get to see, I still see this car porpoising quite badly. And whereas I've seen others looking really significantly better, that's one car where I think that they've got the performance there, but I think they've still got a bit of bouncing going on.
Because with the floor height up, and you've already spoken about how much it's going to cost to the raising of the floor, half a second, which has largely been found back from the teams. So lap times should be about the same, but it doesn't mean that, the porpoising, if you go look for it, will still be there.
Oh, of course, yeah. If you start pushing the limits again, I said earlier, you know, the floor had been lifted by 15 millimeters at the edges. The FIA actually wanted to lift it by 25. You know, their CFD simulation, their computational fluid dynamics simulation showed that would be a better solution. But the team said, no, 15 millimeters and we'll handle the rest. And they are handling it, you know. I can say that's a great pit stop, wasn't it?
Very good. That felt like a 2.1.
Yeah, that was a good one. That definitely was a good one. But yeah, as I was saying, you know, if you do seek out the porpoising, of course you can get the car to porpoise again. But I think that they'll get a better sort of compromise between still getting the lap time out of the car, still getting the downforce from it, but perhaps with a slightly more comfortable ride.
Okay, we've passed Mercedes. Of course, they've confirmed that it was a hydraulic issue that stopped the car a little bit earlier, so it's an early bath for them at the end of day two. It's the first bit of unreliability we've really seen, major unreliability. When you have a hydraulic failure, that's quite a big part of the car and affects many systems. First bit of unreliability we've seen, really, more or less, apart from Drugovich the first morning.
But that's why you go testing. You know, there's a huge amount you can do on your simulation rigs these days, but still that final little bit of vibration, that final little bit of bouncing off a curb and things, it gets shown up in testing. And I think the interesting thing with Mercedes, as I alluded to earlier, now that's the car where I've really seen, compared to the beginning of last year, compared to this test last year, massive difference in the ride. It looks significantly better. The sort of peak G levels I'm seeing, and, you know, I don't have the detailed data that these guys have, look to be about a third of where they were this time last year. So I think they're in for a much better season.
Okay, eventually though, Mercedes quite open about that, talking about eventually we aim to be back or expect to be back, hope to be back in championship contention, talking about a big upgrade package which is coming for the start of the European season, we think. And just explain to those who might not know about the inertia and the way these things work, well, if they have this upgrade, if they know it, if it's in their head, if they found that there's going to be so much pace that's going to be coming to the car, why not? Why isn't it on the car now?
It does take a finite amount of time to get these things from the brain of the aerodynamicist through the testing in CFD, in the wind tunnel, then going into production, producing. It's not just the components, you have to make the jigs and the fixtures. Significant amount of time. So, you know, you really have to start thinking ahead. You know, people often talk about strategy in Formula One. To me, strategy is about making sure you've got your parts on time, you've got the right parts. So, you know, later in the season, we go to Monza, a really low drag place, you need different wings for it. You really have to start thinking about that in May. Race in September, think about it in May. And it's the same here, you know, all the time there'll be new parts coming along. And as these concepts reach fruition, there's a finite time between concept and component.
Okay, Charles Leclerc, we're still seeing on the screen there, Charles Leclerc going for it. Ferrari with the gullies in the side pod, something that I know the Benetton B195 had.
I think it was
around the time. But something then that Mercedes have with their little cooling gullies going to the back. We're seeing gullies on the Alpine here as well. Ferrari are feeding that gully, if you like, with their what they're calling the S duct. A little bit of a second side pod, taking air. Is that what it's doing? Taking air.
Exactly, yeah.
And just getting rid of any sort of latent air that's not moving in the gully.
Exactly what I was saying earlier. You know, the secret to getting the performance on the cars, now we've sort of, I won't say we've eliminated the sort of outwashing aerodynamics, but the real secret now is getting this high energy air to the rear of the car. And the more you can control it along the way, the higher the energy will be of that air as it gets to the rear, and then it starts really helping to extract the air from the diffuser.
Okay, we're just past McLaren. A critical season for them while they build up their infrastructure. We're just going to make it down to Aston Martin, which I think, Crofty, is the sort of key standout, interesting technical team of the test so far, considering Fernando Alonso's pace over the last couple of days. But McLaren, we've got Alfa Romeo Sauber as well. Developments of last year we've seen on their cars.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was talking to Valtteri Bottas just half an hour ago, and he was saying, you know, the car really feels much better. He feels much happier with it. Again, they had quite a lot of porpoising here last year. He says that's much, much better. He says the car feels nicely balanced, and he seemed to be quite confident. And he's a guy I obviously know well from my Williams days, so I think I can interpret him reasonably.
Well, Pat, we timed this perfectly. You're a lucky charm down here because we've got the Aston Martin coming in, and considering, you know, the amount of not only in McLaren getting a new simulator, new wind tunnel and everything, considering the amount of work going into what was effectively the old Jordan factory at Silverstone, and it's going to be the Aston Martin factories. Could they aim to be the sort of class of the field, leading the field in a sustainable and amazing factory there? And well, tell us about this car, what you've seen on it so far.
Well, again, I think we're seeing a lot of tidying up. I think probably a big hit on weight. Luca Fabata, the chief designer here, really, he's one of these guys very, very good on the detail, very good on looking at each part, looking at its function in its form, getting the weight out of it. Aero-wise, absolutely still this thing of, I've lost 10% or whatever it might be from the changes that have been made, I've got to get that back. So again, it's detail, it's evolution. Nothing too startling, I don't think, but a good solid start to the car. And as you say, huge investment going on when they get their own wind tunnel.
And when you have a new group of people, as you said, Luca Fabato, you have Eric Blandin, you have Dan Fallows, all coming. How long does it take for a group to really gel and start kicking
Yeah,
off?
that's a good question, Ted. And they certainly are putting together an impressive group, aren't they? And, you know, I think that's one of the things that Fernando saw. I think when Fernando said, right, I'm going to Aston Martin, he was looking at the future. You know, he's unfortunately made some poor choices in the past, but maybe this is the one that's good, because they are bringing these people together. It does take time. It does take time for everyone to understand their roles and to start to know the strengths and weaknesses of the team. And, of course, in the case of Aston Martin, they really do need this infrastructure upgrade, which I think starts to come online middle of this year. Wind tunnel a little bit beyond that. But I've absolutely no doubt, particularly with Dan Fallows, I think he's a very, very competent guy. And, yeah, I think we're going to start seeing them moving up a bit. And one thing you do know with Aston Martin, they've got sitting in the cockpit Fernando.
Yeah.
And he is going to give everything.
Would you be surprised if he didn't score a few podiums this year?
I think he's very, very capable of it. When that guy gets his motivation there, when he gets pushing, he's still amazing.
And on his day, I wouldn't put it past him to win another Grand Prix.
I'd like to see that. I really would.
Everyone would like to see it. Okay, Pat, thank you so much. Let's just have one thought about the teams still left down in the pit lane. We got Haas, of course. We got Williams and Alpha Tauri, who against their, they've got a good factory, good in Faenza, and they're going to be wanting to improve down there. And what have you seen from Williams as well this year?
Well, let's just go through them. I mean, with Haas, I think, they were a little bit the surprise of last year. They were the ones who moved up. And from what I can see at the moment, I'd say that they're keeping that position. They're looking quite good. Down at Williams, certainly when you look at the headline times, you've got to be surprised at what Sargent's done. Now, the thing with testing is headline times don't mean anything. So much depends on when you run, what tyres you've got on, how much fuel's in the car is, of course, the really critical thing. But I did a little bit of digging with his times today, and even if I take a pretty pessimistic view of his fuel load and the tyre corrections, etc., I have to say I'm still impressed. And on top of that, he's done a lot of laps. He hasn't made mistakes. So I think that's a real good marker for Williams.
Okay.
I just hope they got the car that will allow what I think are going to be two really rather good drivers, really allow them to show what can be done.
That's encouraging you say that about Logan Sargent. Fantastic. He certainly seems to have his head screwed on. He's a hard worker as well, so let's see what he can do. And Nick De Vries coming back to partner Yuki Tsunoda at Alpha Tauri. And, well, they must be a designer's dream, being the jockey sizes that they are. I know I go on about it, but if you're looking to save weight, then I know the weight is done with the driver, etc., but there's not effectively a packaging job you can do if you have two jockeys in the car, is there?
That's true to some extent, Ted, but there are regulations that were introduced a few years ago that ensure that you don't make a size 0 car and you do make a car that actually will take a driver that might be way taller than your actual drivers, so they can't exploit it as much as you might think. Having said that, I know all the little tricks you can do, and you do, and yes, I would rather have a short driver than a tall driver any day.
Okay, fantastic. Well, listen, I know you're going to join Crofty in the commentary box, I think, tomorrow, talk about the future of sustainable fuels and how much Formula One can contribute into the phasing out of fossil fuels in the whole planet, in the world, not least in motorsport. There is a final look at the Williams, and we'll end with a thought on the racing this year, Pat. What will be with the pecking order, whether it's going to be the top three, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, whether Aston Martin is going to join that as well. But we saw at a new rules package last year, the racing, they could race much closer together. What are your hopes and expectations for this year?
Well, I think I set out with some very, very lofty objectives for the car last year, largely around racing close together, and I think we achieved all that. But the one thing I was a little bit disappointed at was I wanted the field to close up, and I did various things in the regulations that I thought would help the smaller teams, but we didn't actually see it. We still saw this this sort of 3% of performance differential front to back. Different ways of looking at it, and you could argue it's a bit less than that. But what I really hope is that we're in year 2, we're in this sort of, now we're into a bit more evolution. So I really would like to see the field close up, and I'd like to see people fighting so close that, you know, you have your day in the sun. Things go for you. You're a midfield team, but you can win a race, and that's what I want to see. It's the unpredictability that I want to bring back in.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Pat, thank you so much for your insight, for your expertise, and for your analysis of the F1 grid for 2023.
Absolutely fantastic. Ted, thank you. The pit stop was 2.5 seconds long, not 2.1, but you know what? That was a very good guess indeed. And Pat Symonds, brilliant to get his technical input there and to look ahead and to look at the regulation changes too. And as he said, I want to see drivers fighting out on the track. Anthony said in my ear, oh, the drivers making all the difference. Yes, even the tall drivers making all the difference there. As Rachel Brooks shakes her head as well at Pat's insistent that he'd rather have a short pilot in the car.
I see nothing wrong with that, Crofty.
I'll let you two fight that over dinner tonight.
Well, no, there's been a debate because I was standing next to Jack Doohan in the pit lane yesterday, and
he's tall lad.
He's 6 foot tall, 6 foot 0, and when I wear my heels, I was 6 foot tall, but I had trainers on yesterday, as you have to have in the pit lane, and so I looked shorter, and people thought Jack must be about 6 foot 5. So I just wanted to clear that up for everybody because there was a little bit of confusion online. But isn't he great? I mean, when we went out trackside just now,
superb to get his
me through
eye on that.
So much that was going on out there, and always great to go and do it.
Now, one thing we were looking at in the commentary box whilst we were listening to Pat was that Ferrari pit stop. Charles Leclerc came in and put on a new set of the C1 tyre, one of the hard compound tyres. Now, don't forget, C1, that will be the hard tyre for next week's race here in Bahrain. So we thought to ourselves, Anthony and I, this could be quite an interesting run from Mr. Leclerc. And we've watched his pace start out with a 1:37.9.
Oh, here is the pit stop. There's the replay on the outside. So, yeah, he came in from that medium tyre run, slapped a set of the C1, as you say, so probably the hard tyre for next week's race. So very relevant. The reason why they would have done it this way around is that you get the heat soak from the hot brakes, and it would help in these dark conditions, cooler conditions, help to heat them up on your outlap. And he's straight out there, a hot pit stop, as we call it. Well spotted by Ted, as Laurent McKees looks on as well. I think there's a sign of approval there by that man.
And this started this run at about a 1:37.9. I think he's done 6 or 7 laps since. Yeah. And we got down to the 1:37.0s. Now it's started to creep back up again, 1:37.6 for his last lap.
He's got a reference out there as well of Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Yeah. And he was lapping in the high 1:37s when Leclerc was in the low 1:37s. And now he's dipped into the 38s. Well, he's gone up into the 38s. Leclerc's still hovering in the higher 37s, or mid-37s. The Ferrari at this stage, I say, really starting to show its speed compared to the likes of the Alpine, who you've got to imagine is going to be somewhere closer to the front of the pack, or at least top in the midfield.
It's about half a second difference, and now it's just elongated to about 8/10 as we watch Charles Leclerc making his way through the final couple of corners.
So Ferrari and Leclerc himself really approached this session in a bid to get a handle on the car's balance with the medium tyre, do a few laps on that, pit stop, and then slap on that set of the C1s. This is a very relevant run for Ferrari, and there'll be a lot of eyes on this, Crofty.
Yeah.
And just watching that, fighting the rear just a little bit there on the exit of turn 2. It's great looking back at the driver's eyes, that concentration as he looks to the apex of turn 4. Wait for it, squeeze the throttle pedal carefully. A quick look down at the dash, still hovering around that 2-second mark off the pace. These are good times that Leclerc's pumping in now. He was back into a 37.4 that last lap.
Whilst Gasly, 1:38.8.
So he's drifting away for Gasly there.
And is that rear tyre degradation on the Alpine, I wonder, starting to take a hold, where Ferrari just managing to keep those rears a little bit more intact. And sometimes we see with the tyres that the times get slower as they go through a graining cycle. And once you've gone through that, then we start to see as the fuel burns off, the times come down again. That Can happen. Sometimes it's the other way around.
It starts to, if your tyre degradation is stable enough, the fuel depletion, at some point there's a crossover, and you can start to go quicker again. But it's quite rare, to be fair. Max Verstappen's back out there. He's on the medium tyre at this stage, lapping in the high 1 minute 37s as well. So this is a really interesting stage. It's so relevant to remember. The race starts at 6 p.m.
It is. We'll be 58 minutes into the race.
Exactly. So really, really relevant right now, what we're seeing unfold. And I know we're not seeing the shiny lap times, the fastest the car can go.
But this is the bit we'll all be concentrating on Sunday's race. Absolutely.
So here's that moment. I think it's a replay of that snap he had on turn 2. It wasn't much. He's just feeling the rear end of the car, and he'll get away with that for now, but you don't want to be doing that in a corner that's any higher speed than that.
Such a great camera, though, when you're on a night race like this, isn't it? To see where their eyes are looking, to see how much they're dealing with during a lap of the track. That's just a brilliant camera to have on the car.
Around about 200ths of a second on the last lap between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. In Charles Leclerc's favour, 1 on the hard tyre, 1 on the medium tyre. And if it is during the race, round about 200ths of a second a lap difference between the Ferrari and the Red Bull, well, we'll bring that one on.
Yeah, what a race.
That'll be very nice. Gasly has pitted. So that reference has gone now.
Yeah, it's a shame. But he was further along his run than Leclerc is on this C1 tyre.
We've got soft tyres on for Zhou Guanyu here.
Yeah, we have. So that's the C5, the softest of Pirelli's range that they have here for this test. We won't be seeing that tyre next week.
No.
We will have a soft tyre, but it won't be the C5.
Be a harder soft tyre. Just to really confuse.
We understand what you mean, Rachel.
It will be the
We've been here long enough now, yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. So the tyre compound choices for the Bahrain Grand Prix, C1, C2, C3. So in terms of the testing here, as Zhou Guanyu goes fastest overall with a 1:31.6. That is a glory run, because that's the C5 and we won't see that. But this is a test where you've got to cover all bases for the season. So it's right. Andreas Seidel's only stood there and just to give us the impression he's doing some work, but he's laughing and joking with the engineers at the moment after he accused us of doing nothing today. You've got to give yourself a run on the C5 at some stage. If you're an Alfa Romeo team, Red Bull might think, look, we've got enough pace. Ferrari might think we've got enough pace. We need to leave those alone. But the soft tyre will be the C3 for the Bahrain Grand Prix, which is a medium in the context of this test. C2 is also a medium, because don't forget, C0 and C1 are the hards.
Yeah.
It all starts 0, ladies and gentlemen.
And just to recap, so the C1 is the white text with a white line. The C2, yellow text only. C3, yellow text and the yellow line.
Yeah. Which looks a little bit similar at speed.
Well, I was going to say that. I was going to say when they're rolling around at speed like that, I'm just, It
is a very difficult thing to do.
Is it less yellow or more yellow?
Yeah.
That's I think that's the way I'm looking at it.
Bridgestone used to have a different compound with a green stripe. Do you remember the green stripe down the middle?
Oh yeah, of course I do. Yeah,
I remember
which they brought in when we went. How can we tell the difference between your tyres?
But don't you remember we had, was it 7 soft tyres with the different colours, or 7 tyres with the purple and the pink and
extreme hard, extreme medium, extreme soft, sticky, and disintegrates, I think is what it's doing.
The full rainbow of colours we had.
Pirelli actually did a vote, didn't they, as to what you would call the softest of all the tyres, and I suggested Dave, because I just thought it'd be a really funny name for a tyre. It didn't get taken very seriously.
You voted for Boaty McBoatface, didn't you, as well?
Tyre McSticky tyre.
Yeah.
That's what I'd do.
There you go, look, you can see clearly there.
Yeah. Sticky Mc...
Text and a line.
Sticky McGrippy rubber. That would be the ultra tyre for me. There you go. Well done, Zhou Guanyu. Fastest lap.
You got Red Bull and Verstappen quaking in their boots.
So while I've been waffling for a lap, what's been going on? Charles Leclerc 1:37.9, Max Verstappen 1:37.5.
So stable lap times at the moment for Verstappen on the medium tyre. We don't actually know which C range it is. We haven't seen a shot of him out there. But either way, at this stage, it's lap times look stable, which you would expect from Verstappen.
He's not been out there as long as Charles Leclerc, remember? Is he on lap 3 or 4 of this current run? I think, Max, as we watch the replays of Zhou Guanyu with 26 and a half minutes to go of this session, and more importantly, about 11 and a half minutes of free running before we start getting the red flag, yellow flag, virtual safety car starting testing.
I still think that looks like the chocolate egg that is around at Easter a lot, his helmet design. Maybe just because I've given up chocolate, but it's every time it goes around, it just makes me think of it.
Well, I was confused when I watched on the circuit yesterday around turn 1-2, and I saw it from a side profile because I'd been so used to watching just the roll hoop cam of looking down the purple.
Yes.
And when I saw the luminous yellow and orange or whatever colour it is from the side, I thought it was a different driver in the car. I was totally confused. But then again, it doesn't take much.
No, I was about to say that, but I didn't want to.
Get in there before you.
Those tyres, Anthony, look like a continuous yellow.
More yellow.
More yellow.
Yes.
So what are those ones, Anthony? If there's more yellow, which mediums are they?
It's the C3.
Which is...
That's your softest tyre for next week.
Softest tyre for next week.
We stick to soft, medium and hard for races. It just simplifies everything.
He's got that down to a 137.5 now.
He has. And Charles Leclerc with a 137.8.
So I don't know what Verstappen just did there. It took a cool-down lap, 149.6 on that lap. So... yeah, definitely something happened. Did he go off, or did he just cooling the tyres down and go again?
Well, if that's the soft tyre for the race, and he's done kind of four or five laps, you would expect a little bit of a cool-off. If this was a practice session for the Bahrain Grand Prix, you'd expect a bit of a cool-off there. Obviously, you can't do that in the race. You just have to put up with it.
You know what? Actually, the joy they have here in these conditions with fewer cars out on circuit, effectively just half the field, isn't it? They have a lot more free air out there. So the data they're getting right now, arguably, is better than what they're going to get in an FP2 session next week.
Yeah,
with all that traffic out there.
20 cars on track. Still the fastest, not the fastest today, Max Verstappen. He was... by round about 400ths of a second, the quickest man yesterday, and he's round about 400ths of a second behind Zhou Guanyu today because Alfa Romeo decided to send their man out at a very good time on the C5 tyre. I dare say he might well stay at the top of the testing times this middle day of the three, on board then with Verstappen.
A bit of lift and coast going on before the final corner. No signs that he's on a proper race run. Is it just me, or does it look like his steering wheel's just slightly off centre? It's just pointing to the right the whole time, tilted to the right.
See the angle on it?
That happens quite often, actually, in car setup. You go out there, your first lap, and you think, oh, no, the steering wheel's off to one side. But
you just have to put up with it, otherwise it will take you too long to come in the garage, change it, and then go back out again.
Exactly, but maybe it's just the camera angle. The camera is off to the left-hand side, isn't it?
No, but it does look like it's on an angle. While we watch on board with Max Verstappen, Sam Collins down in the pit lane has something he wants to show us. Sam, down to you.
Yeah, thanks, Crofty. Well, I've been loitering in the pit lane just to see what's going on, have a chat with Pat after Ted was chatting, and I noticed something with Ted just as he was walking back. Alpine have a bit of a problem with their pit stops for this season. Each time that Alpine has come in this evening into the pits, there's been a problem removing the rear wheels. Either one or both of the rear wheel has been stuck on the wheel gums, both these snazzy wheel gums in the pits, but also if you walk around with me, you can still see some attention going on at the back of the car to the rear axle and the rear wheel of the Alpine. Now, they've got the wheels off after the last time it came in, but it took a good 2 or 3 minutes, so we're not quite talking Mercedes Monaco level of issues. but there is a clear issue with the rear axle of the Alpine in that they're really struggling to take the rear wheels off every single time they come into the pit box. And there is still investigation and work going on the back end of that car right now. The team are a little concerned about it. And after this car, Fernando Alonso brought this car into the pits. Actually, it's not Fernando Alonso, is it? I've made that mistake.
So last year, Sam. So last year.
Car into the pits. There was a huge amount of investigation at the rear end of the car, but also on the rear jack and on the wheel guns. So Alpine have a pretty major issue to solve. And actually, yeah, you can see it on the wall of the garage. The team are investigating that issue, replaying the footage from the pit gantry over and over again. And you can see that they're getting it done there fairly easily. But when the car returns to the garage, the rear wheels do not remove from the car. There is a problem. So, Crofty, back to you. But Alpine have got some serious work to do for next week.
A real shame. Sam apparently can't hear us down there, because I would have loved to ask him what his thoughts are as to why that might be the case. And we do see it from time to time, but that is a big problem.
It wasn't when I was down there yesterday. This time yesterday, I was in the pit lane and watched their pit stop, and they were coming off cleanly. There didn't seem to be any problems with those guns. They're the ones that are blue while it's all fine and they're doing the job. And as soon as the wheel is on and it's tightened and it's all good to go, they go green. If there's a problem, those lights turn red. But yesterday, when they were doing them, we were watching, there wasn't a problem at all.
That pit stop from Mercedes that Sam was referring to, I think officially now the world's longest pit stop at a day and a half, because they had to basically they could not get the wheel off at all. It was locked solid, and they had to go back to the factory to try and sort that one out with a bigger hammer. You know, I know it's testing. You're going to get these troubles from time to time, but that's not an issue you really want to be trying to solve and deal with the start of the season fast approaching. Watching Logan Sargent for Williams, whose last lap before this was a 1:38.0. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, we've been keeping a lot of focus on him as that run continues now into the 1:38s himself, 1:38.2 on his hard tyre run, whilst Max Verstappen 1:37.3 after doing at least one cool-down lap and keeping his foot in for the next couple after that.
I think Sargent is on the C2 tyre there, so medium tyre for next weekend, and currently lapping in the low 1:38s.
Which of those tyres then, Ant, on the Alpine?
Prototype.
Well, they're the prototype ones, yeah.
That's why it was a trick question.
But at least the Alpine is back out there again.
Exactly, yeah. Good to see. Pierre Gasly at the wheel of that, of course, this afternoon.
I love that Sam said Fernando Alonso. It's so last year. And at this stage, before we get into the first race, we're all going to make those little slip-ups.
I was watching on track earlier, and your comments about the Haas and the AlphaTauri when they follow each other on track and how difficult it is to see. And as I stood there, the two came around together, and I just thought, can't you two go at a different time?
Told you.
Please go at a different
Someone's going to get it wrong, yeah. And when I say someone, I mean Crofty.
But what was yours? So one's got a black front wing and one's got a red front wing.
Yeah.
That's the difference that you have to go by.
Yes.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, the AlphaTauri
has a black front wing. Until they repaint
Both rear wings have red with white writing on.
Go with that front wing, Rach. You won't go far wrong. So let's have a look here as the Alpine comes back into the pits. Are they going to attempt to take those prototype tyres off and do a pit stop?
Watch that rear end.
That seems to do the trick all right.
Left to right, yeah.
It was steady. Wasn't breaking any records, was it? But it was a steady pit stop and it worked.
Someone will have put a stopwatch on it. I reckon it was 2.8 seconds. I didn't put a stopwatch on it.
I think it was about 3.1.
We can all play this game.
And you're going in the middle.
Yeah. So, yeah, they put a set of the C3s on there. We're going to see more long runs. It seems to be what the teams have settled into now, with just 17 minutes to go of this session. And of course, like you said, Crofty, as Lando Norris watches on, it's going to be that VSC period as well at the end of the session. So, yeah, in reality, what? Only 5 more minutes to go?
At what point tomorrow would you expect to see someone show a bit more of their hand if they were going to on a single, or their single lap pace, a bit more of their single lap pace? Are they going to wait until this time tomorrow night?
You mean of the big players?
Yes.
We might not see it, to be fair. We might not even see it at all until next week.
The question is, do they need to? Do they need to bring anything onto the car to show their hand for next week? I'm not sure.
Where's his team?
He's getting out in a very strange place. Normally the car would get wheeled back into the garage before the driver gets out. Is it? Is he going to jump clear, Ant? The green light's on.
The green light's on. That's what I was going to say.
Wouldn't expect him to with that green light, but
or is he practicing how to do it?
Oh,
because he might actually need to do it at some stage, and he won't have done it because he's making his debut in F1. So that might just be a Logan. We're just going to take you through the drill of if you stop and you need to jump clear, and this is how you do it. And obviously you can't do that in a garage because you probably bang your head on something.
Yeah, because the rest of the team I mean, they're prepared with the marigolds on.
Yeah,
but,
that's a drill, isn't it?
But they're calm. There's no.
That's.
I think you're right, Crofty.
Yeah.
Well, that man there would not be that close doing what he's doing if the car was live.
Fernando Alonso with more Flovies paint on that Aston Martin continues to pound round now with 129 laps on the board.
They did this yesterday, Aston Martin, didn't they? Just when we got to virtual safety car testing time, they put some Flovis paint on and looked like they were doing constant aero speed runs. But we've gone past the. Here we go. I was going to say I'm waiting for the yellow flag and the VSC test to come on because we've just gone past the quarter past mark.
Verstappen, sorry, Rachel. Verstappen, by the way, for those of you interested in the lap times, he's still in the mid 137s on that same set of tyres. So on the softest tyre of the range that we'll have next weekend, he's able to continue in the mid 37s. So yeah, really for me, that almost shows more of their hand than what they've done in any other stint throughout these 2 days.
To keep those consistently in that time bracket. While Charles Leclerc's still a 138.3, so he's still on that hard tyre and lapping in a 138.3 now. But it was, yeah, as you say, looks good for Max Verstappen and those softer tyres for next week.
Was it just a drill? Was it just a practice there, or
is it a failure?
In which case, why is there still a green light on the top of the roll hoop?
If there's a failure to the system, then it could be saying it's a green light, but they've actually detected somewhere else there is a problem.
What's the red there?
So maybe that is the deciding factor. Maybe that's not a... No, it's the roll hoop. Usually it's the roll hoop. It's
I would be very worried if the car is live and it's not showing it on the LED by the roll hoop. Car's been left in neutral, as you can see. But that light's there, Ant, isn't it, for a safety precaution?
It is, yeah. I'm just trying to rack my brains. We saw Sebastian Vettel, was it last year?
Holland?
Free practice, yeah.
Just saw some other mechanics running down the pit lane there. It looks like someone might have stopped at the end of the pit lane. One of the other teams, perhaps. Alfa Romeo.
It's an Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu. Now, normally they wouldn't be able to push him back, would they? Because he's gone beyond the white line. And I think they're just checking to make sure it's okay. So we have a virtual safety car test on the track, but probably more action at the moment going on in the pit lane. And still down at Williams, see someone's got the camera phone out now to take some pics to send back to base so they can have a look.
Yeah, looks like they've got the all clear now.
Yeah.
To move the car. But you would be able to, Ant, wouldn't you? If that light was green, but you would still have the data coming through to you to tell you that that wasn't the case. So you could still inform your driver.
I think they were giving it the once-over to make absolutely sure.
Something flagged up somewhere, didn't it? Definitely.
Is that your prediction for the...
Yeah, they plug in they plug the car in to see if there's a leakage anywhere of the flow of energy. As the Alfa Romeo gets wheeled back into its garage spot. I wonder what happened there for Joe Guanyu at the end of the pit lane. Did they just decide? No, he still would have gone out there. There must be a problem with the car. Here we go. So he's preparing for a launch with the burnouts. Activates his race start mode. Oh, that didn't sound good, did it?
Very good.
Does he try again?
Ooh.
Ah, yeah, so when he's activated the race start mode, I wonder if it's just, I mean, that sounded like a lot like clutch slip. As soon as he was trying to activate first gear,
it wasn't getting
even with
gear.
the clutch pulled in, it was trying to, you could hear it slipping. He was aware of it straight away and put it into neutral. Tried again, the same thing happened. No, they've chained off that, Williams.
So that looks like a hybrid system issue, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, I know this looks like there is an issue with the Williams car. All I'm going to say is, this is testing, and one of the things you have to sign off as a team at testing is your processes if you get a failure on the ERS system. And it looked to me, and remember that light was green at the top at all times, and that light is green to tell you whether it's safe to touch or not. And it is, you're not going to have a live car and a green light, yeah? It looked to me like a rehearsal at all times. You have to sign off your process. You have to do the process so that everyone at the team is familiar with what happens, driver and crew, and you need to do that during testing. It's something you need to do for the FIA. And I get the feeling that what's going on at Williams, whilst it looks really dramatic, what we're seeing is a process signing off.
A complete dress rehearsal, yeah.
And if I'm wrong on that, apologies, and we'll look into it and we'll talk about it in greater detail. But I do think I'm absolutely spot on.
Usually that roll hoop light is a fail-safe mechanism.
And what better time to do it than with a rookie who needs to know as well and might not
under a
had to do it
BSE.
before.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, what happened to Joe Guanyu, I don't think was a rehearsal. I think that was unintentional.
Yeah, that was. I've never heard that sound before.
You haven't been in a car with me then.
Yeah.
Not getting it
my goodness, have I abused cars at my time?
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Everyone's back out then. So Max came in, Charles came in. Everyone going back out. What tyres is Max on, Ant? Lots of yellow.
I only just saw. I'm going to need a better angle. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You threw that one to me
Curve
just as he had passed.
Way.
I think that's the C2, but.
Oh no! I really did.
C3 is the C3, isn't it? Yeah.
Stitched you up.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. All right, let's see what sort of time he does on these. So this next weekend is.
It's their softest tyre for next weekend.
Right.
So it looks a bit like a shiny edge sidewall as well. So is this a newer tyre run for him?
Oh, there's something sticking off the back there. There was something stuck to the back of the car there, flapping around. Only looked like a bit of plastic or something. It's come away. So we'll see what sort of times he does on this one.
I'm told otherwise by one of my sources on the pit.
So we're going to see a standing start procedure here. So
is that why he would have put them on?
Maybe, yeah. You're warming up the tyres here, ready for your start. And hopefully all of the drivers got the memo this time and remembered the memo. More importantly, we should see. We might see the full start again. They might completely do the same procedure we saw before, where the full start after the cars line up on the grid like they are now, and then they trundle around again, reposition themselves on the grid, and then you should see one by one pull away, rather than the whole bunch pulling away together as if it's a proper race, which is what we were expecting, to be honest, in the last time we saw it. But
didn't quite happen.
Only Lando Norris and Kevin Magnussen did the right thing by.
They did their homework over the winter,
or just listened on the day. Yeah.
You mean drivers don't listen?
I'm not going to do it again. So pick a side, any side, Max.
This is why we've got the extra time added onto these days.
So all the lights on the left-hand side, green, yeah. So that's the signal it's going to be a full. So they come on before the orange lights on the gantry start flashing. So they're the lights to look for first for next week if it happens. So yeah, they're all going to pull away slowly, then come back round onto the grid. An aborted start. And then next time we see them come round again, all those lights on the left-hand side along the pit wall should remain green as a sign to all around, all the marshals, I'm guessing, all around that it's safe to go. It will be the start. Then the red lights will come on and then off. But then one car will peel away. It's not going to be exciting, basically, towards turn one. It's going to just be a safe pull-away procedure.
Do you want to know some information? Apologies for being quiet. Well, I know I shouldn't apologise for being quiet. I've just been doing a bit of digging, and you know we have secret squirrel sources everywhere that help us out with this.
Yes.
So we said that it was just a dress rehearsal at Williams for the process, and then I was given some information that it might be a problem, car might be live, etc. Do you know what the actual answer I think is? It was a dress rehearsal, but during the dress rehearsal, they found an issue, which was convenient timing, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they did find an issue. Theoretically, the car was safe at all times because that light was green on the roll hoop, but it was a dress rehearsal that found a bit of an issue, which is why the laptop then came out as well. So, as is often the case in life, it wasn't one theory or another, it was somewhere in the middle on this one. And that's what I've just been trying to find out.
But it couldn't have been that dramatic because the green light remained on all the time.
Yeah, the issue's been fixed anyway, and it wasn't that dramatic, but...
so everybody was right in the end.
Yeah, great. Yes.
Isn't that nice?
Whoever was telling our producer there's an issue...
Brooke steps in.
Yeah, everybody's happy. But I like to try and find out if something is right or wrong, to be fair.
But it did make sense that they would do a dress rehearsal with a new driver as well.
Yeah, but that's exactly what they were doing. I mean, it wasn't maybe the best timing in the world, but...
And that's why you do them,
and then found a small problem that wasn't really a problem.
Absolutely.
Don't confuse us anymore, Ant. Now, what's happening here?
Actually, and everyone lived happily
ever after. It's so true.
Meanwhile, for this fairy tale,
green lights are on the left-hand side.
This is absolutely brilliant. On pole position, ladies and gentlemen, Nick de Vries.
Is this why you rehearse your race starts?
He's got himself on one. Now, this is the best race start dress rehearsal we could possibly ever have, because Nick de Vries on pole, Nico Hulkenberg alongside him on the front row.
Told you that
AlphaTauri and Haas, and away goes Nick de Vries. Absolutely incredible. The Hulk is back, and after him, there goes Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris's teammate Oscar Piastri. See, I'm trying the dress rehearsal for mistakes as well. Yeah, chases after the Ferrari. There goes Pierre Gasly, and there goes Max Verstappen. But it was nice actually to see an AlphaTauri and a Haas pull away alongside each other. Yeah, I'll try and keep you as accurate as I possibly can during the course of the season, but I'm watching the front wings.
That couldn't have been any better for Crofty, could it? What a moment to practice.
They're now rehearsing the red flag situation again. But when I was out on track, it was the AlphaTauri and Haas that were locking up at turn 8.
Yeah.
Of all the cars, they were the two locking up at turn 8.
Easy place to lock up, bottom of the hill. Easy place to roll over. You remember Lance Stroll?
Yes.
Ended upside down.
In that dramatic race weekend.
If you've not been with us, Lance Stroll not at this test, of course, after sustaining an injury, pre-season training, when he was riding his bike in Spain. Team monitoring his situation very, very closely. We expect a statement Monday or Tuesday, possibly Wednesday, though, because it is give Lance every chance to prove his fitness to take his place alongside Fernando Alonso and race in the opening race of the season. At the moment, Felipe Drugovich is standing in as the other driver for the test. He will test tomorrow morning, and then Fernando Alonso will take the car back in the afternoon. He has done 130 laps today, Fernando Alonso. Double time for Fernando Alonso. The honour today of the most laps goes to Logan Sargent, 154. And I wouldn't want to be the trainer giving his neck a massage later. That's going to give you some sore thumbs, that one. Zhou Guanyu, 133 laps for him. And the other teams splitting the duties. George Russell, only 26 laps after his car stopped with hydraulic issues, and that's cost Mercedes an hour and a half of testing time in the ideal conditions for the day.
I lost a lot of valuable data there.
Who's got the most... Well, I was going to say, Dan, who's got the most work to do tomorrow then, do you think, from the grid?
Well, I'd say, I mean, Mercedes lost out on those long runs, valuable long runs, that information would take into next week. But, I mean, all of them have had a good amount of running. Generally speaking, reliability has been very good for all of the teams. But, Mercedes have lost out the most time.
And George, in particular, is losing the hour and a half of his afternoon's running, so...
Yeah. What are they taking pictures of here for Nico Hülkenberg? Was that
of him in the helmet?
Looking back at him.
Yeah.
The fans go on Charles Leclerc. Hot work out there, even in these nighttime conditions in Bahrain. What did it drop down to, actually, Crofty? We've got any temperatures
23
here?
23 at the moment. 23 degrees at the moment, 27 on track.
It's about 24 degrees when Zhou Guanyu set that fastest time. I was looking away, and then when you said the fans have gone on Charles Leclerc, I'm like, pit lane walk started early. What's going on down there, to be honest? We have just one more day to go of testing. It's absolutely flashing by in quite the rush. And zooming in to Max Verstappen, we are still to see anything in that Red Bull that would make you think they won't start the season as favourites.
Let's look at his body language when he takes the helmet off.
Are you a body language expert?
Yes, when he's taking the balaclava off.
He didn't throw the helmet down or his gloves.
He's not stamped out in a fit of pique. He just looks like, another good day, wasn't it? Christian Horner's having a chat with Gianpiero Lambiase, Max's race engineer. Nobody seems to be looking...